So like, why do we need to pick on energy consumption in the first place? Don't follow that red herring.
Yeah.
Let's embrace the fact that energy consumption is a really positive thing.
And I did notice that, you know, the many of the people that you interviewed or that appeared on your show, Steve Barber, I know for one, rehearsed that very same sentiment. Alana, I want to thank you for coming on my show, and let me see if I put the right accents on this. Alana Mediavilla, did I say that right?
Ajá, muy bien. Sí,
Well,
yes.
let me hear how you say it.
Alana. So you
Mhm.
got that perfectly.
Yeah.
Mediavilla.
Oh, I couldn't. I'm too much LA,
I've been
too
saying
much
it my whole
gringo.
life, so I've been
Yeah.
practicing it.
So I've watched your show, Dirty Coin, and you know, I'm one of those millennials that, you know, kind of threw off the National Geographic, threw off the documentaries, and so when I was prepping to watch it, it was almost like homework. Like I was like, oh, I don't want to do it, but it's like once I turned it on, bam, you drew me in easily, and you know, I've interacted with you once in real life. You probably don't remember, just like a pass by in Miami at 23. Someone introduced me to you. I don't know who, but I said like, "Oh, it's nice to meet you." Blah blah blah. And so I'm like, I'm looking forward to seeing the creator in the show because like I want to recognize all these people that I know, and I've recognized like you said off air 54 people in your show, and I recognized about a dozen who would know me per se, but I didn't see you except for a little bit, and we'll get to that one scene. You had two parts. You had that one scene with this one specific person that's really funny, and then at the end where you kind of give your little like a one little comment where it's like almost like a laugh to a joke. I want to ask you, why do you choose not to include yourself in the documentary?
That was your surprise question.
That's a surprise question. Yeah.
All right. I thought you were gonna say why I called it dirty coin. That was where my money was at.
We're gonna
That's a
ask
good
now
question.
that we answer that after you answer this one because that's I kind of know, but I want to see what you say. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't put myself in the documentary because I've never put myself in my work. All of the work that all of the corporate work that I have done, I am not in it. It's not
Mhm.
the Alana show. It's a documentary about this technology, this client. I've had my production company for 13 years, and I would just be a producer and director of corporate films that I would write, I would cast. We did fiction work, like we did like commercials and we did different things and a lot of but corporate documentaries, because I was in Silicon Valley, it was the my lifeblood for of the company. It's, user stories, obviously very heavily inspired by Apple. I worked at Google for 5
Mm.
years as a video producer and director as well. I was in none of those things. Actually, there's a couple of things that I was in, like only because I was, testing the camera or something, and I just happened to be there, and they happened to take a video of me laughing, and then they would just add it as B-roll. So I would enjoy editing those clips of myself because it was like kind of editing myself as a little signature that I was here. I was here, I was this age, I looked like this. And it's more of a chuckle for me because nobody knew who I was. I was just I could have been another B-roll person. And
Right.
so I enjoy kind of taking that like little chuckle, like the Stan Lee moments where, I'm there. Oh, there I am. But only if you know. Like a lot of people don't know who I am.
Okay, so
So,
before we answer dirty coin, then I guess let's just go to that question that I was alluding to. There's a scene where you're interviewing Alex DeVries. Is that how you say his name?
Alex DeVry is how I would say it, but
DeVry. Okay,
it's
Alex
sketched.
DeVry, and he's kind of like this chief source for a lot of climate FUD around Bitcoin. And so you were in that scene. I remember like you were interviewing him face to face, and you were looking at him across from over the top of your computer. So was that one of those instances where you wanted to inject yourself, or is that just how the cameraman did? Like, did you have that decision to inject yourself there?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I didn't go physically everywhere. I couldn't go physically everywhere.
Right.
So there were certain places that I hired a local crew, and then I gave them all the list of B-roll that I needed, and I would just pop up for interviews when I could and then not be there. So there were some locations that I wasn't physically at, but there were most of them I was physically there. And I feel like he's one of the most controversial characters, and I was always very careful of how I was going to portray his story because he really was the inception point of so much fun, all of the fun. Um, and I feel like he came from a good place. Like I also decided to make Dirty Coin because I too was concerned about the energy concerns as well. I also wanted to know, as somebody that thought that Bitcoin was cool, well, how much energy do these data centers consume? And it's like, wow, they do consume a lot. Wow, that is this is actually
Yeah.
causing brownouts in certain areas. People are like stealing electricity in little
Mhm.
apartments and piling these machines in. I mean, it has been a long history and hasn't all been peaches, it hasn't all been great, but it has been a evolving. Now we have publicly traded companies that are mining Bitcoin. We have companies like Gritlas that are mining off stranded energy, Crusoe. Like stranded energy is the best place to mine Bitcoin. So like it or not, this is here to stay, and I just really wanted to understand it. And so I totally understood Alex from where he was coming from, where he is coming from as a concerned citizen. And I think that gets brought up a lot that he may have a conflict of interest because he does work for the Dutch central bank. But I believe that at the end of the day, we all kind of gravitate towards what we have affinity towards. And that's like saying that I have a conflict of interest because I come from tech and I'm like a techno optimist, and I come from Google and,
Yeah.
because I own Bitcoin. And so I think that I believe that we do gravitate towards what we love, and I don't want to assume ill intent. And the quotes that I have him in, I have him explaining, where he's coming from and why energy must be scrutinized. And that's just that's what drives him. And I have
Let
to
me a
represent that fairly. And I was there in person. And that's why I injected myself specifically in that scene. I don't have B-roll of myself in other interviews, but in that one, I was like, I wanted to be very clear that he had this conversation face to face with me.
Yeah, it's very interesting because all the other you said, I think offline, you also said 54 people appeared in your documentary. Is that correct? Yeah? And
Ish.
ish, okay.
Yes.
And, you know, I
Interviews.
just feel like I just feel like he was the only one that was kind of coming at it from a negative standpoint. Some people were very wind, solar, renewable. Some people were very or traditional or like fossil fuel based. But and some people are just advocates or teachers. But that guy was the one that was against. So it's funny that was the one person that was kind of against the Bitcoin mining movement, and of course, you also showed up in that one. I guess as a good natured gesture. But it did. If he were to see it, I mean, does he feel like he came off in an appropriate way? Do you feel like you represented him well? Do you feel like he would feel like, oh man, that made me look bad? Like, how do you think he would feel about his scene if he hasn't responded to you about it yet?
You know, he has not. So he has not responded to me yet about the film, but I can tell you this. My mom raised me with this idea, and I've raised my kids of treat others the way that you would like to be treated. And
Golden rule.
he he has built a career around uh, talking about Bitcoin mining and how bad it is and its energy consumption. And he has gone publicly time and time again and defended what has been already defied, debunked
Yeah.
theories. And so, if you are going to be the kind of person that are going to choose to do that with your life, to have evidence in front of you and not change your narrative for whatever reason, then this industry is going to look at you as a person that was pivotal historically against Bitcoin mining, specifically on the vector of energy, specifically on it's the equivalent of throwing away 2 iPads or 2 iPhones or whatever those quotes are. Is going to consume as much more energy than the entire world by 2021, 2020. I don't recall what
2020.
it was.
From
2020.
2017, the announcement. Yep. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the math hasn't added up. Ultimately, miners have just gone to stranded energy. The reality is that they do consume a lot of energy, and that's why I felt like there was a story there, and where I was seeing a lot on TV and just like at conferences, people being like, "Well, Christmas lights also consume a lot of energy," and I'm like, "Bro, like everybody loves Christmas lights. You can't diss Christmas lights. They bring joy." So, like, why do we need to pick on energy consumption in the first place? Don't follow that red herring.
Yeah.
Let's embrace the fact that energy consumption is a really positive thing.
And I did notice that, the many of the people that you interviewed or that appeared on your show, Steve Barber, I know for one, rehearsed that very same sentiment. So let's talk about some of the people that stuck out to me. It's like, oh, that was interesting, and I have a few that I want to go down. Again, I'm trying not to spoil. I would recommend everyone, for someone who doesn't like documentaries, go watch Dirty Coin. It actually was edifying. It was swift, only an hour and 10 minutes long, and it goes by like that. And you'll like hearing from the people that you normally see on Twitter, you normally see on the YouTube videos and at the conferences, but there you can see the narrative flow and come together, even though everyone's in multiple parts of the world. That's what's funny. You were never in one single. I mean, you were in Norway, or not Norway, Finland to Malawi to New York and all these places, but the narrative was so seamless. So I want to start off with Jeff Booth. Hey, it's Ulric, and real quick, I just want to thank you for watching. At Coinbase, we strive to separate ourselves by making principled content. Your subscription helps the algorithm recognize that our message is important and should be seen by more people. So help our stories get to others, hit the sub button, and don't forget to share, even if just to one person. Let's change the world. Jeff Booth at 7 minutes. He mentioned access to clean green energy in your documentary. And this is during the time when you were focusing on the people of Malawi. What's the priority of people in Malawi with no access or minimal access to energy to use a specific type, namely solar or wind? I know Jeff comes from he's very adamant about using renewable energy. But are these locals extremely passionate also about renewables, or are these people like, say, just help me turn the lights on the easiest, quickest, and most efficient way possible?
I mean, okay. I don't believe that I'm an expert other than I have been uh, working on this for 3 years, but I am a filmmaker. I can tell you that at the end of the day, we need to understand that being able to have electricity at home means that, or natural gas to cook, or just to have sources of energy, to be able to put up a coal plant and it's up and running really quickly, and it can power a hospital, and it can power schools, and it can power lights at night, and it can make the streets more safe. I think that the cost of human life always needs to be examined, and not just the cost of human life down the road, but the cost of human life today. And so that's my personal opinion, personally. Ultimately, Africa is full, and not just Africa, but Africa, we're talking about Malawi right now, is full of natural, clean, green energy already. So, for example, in the case of Malawi, it's a river. And this is, just it's not geothermal, it's
Hydro, hydro,
hydroelectric.
hydroelectric. Yeah.
It's a hydroelectric dam, and this is something that it also makes them independent. So they are a stranded region as well. So even transporting natural gas in there, it's not really about being anti-natural gas. It's about just logistically,
Yeah.
it's not. They're not in the middle of a pipeline, or crossway of commerce in that way. So being able to be self-reliant, I think, is really important. And I believe that this is where solar has really come in as well, because solar is able to, create electricity in the middle of nowhere as well that can be consumed in the middle of nowhere, at least during the day.
Right.
And but there's controversies there on if you're using agricultural land, like in the case of Puerto Rico. I have listened to very compelling arguments for why our agricultural lands should not be used for solar. So it's again very nuanced. This is not a good bad situation. I think that you always have to look at the cost of human capital locally, and this is why you can't have like a central control of this is how it will always be, because you need to we have mayors, we have senators, we have local people that can really, those are the people that we should care about. We shouldn't even care what the president has to say about anything. So ultimately, I'm very hyper local in that regard. And ultimately, you need to measure the cost of human life locally, your hospitals locally, your schools locally. Only you understand the human price that is occurring. Here in Puerto Rico, we have very unreliable electricity, and when there's no electricity, we still have iPhones now. So I tell my kids, like, this is very different from when I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was no power. It's like, boom. It's like, okay, where are the dominoes? There's nothing else to do. I guess I'll read a book.
Mm.
Now it's a little different. We have LED lights that are, electric and everything. But, this is something that sometimes people's refrigerators get destroyed. We had our water heater get destroyed because of the surges. And it's already expensive to live here, and now you have all these broken, uh, uh,
Intangible costs, right?
yeah, it's a real problem. And ultimately, locally, I believe that those decisions need to be. I would never make decisions like that for an entire region. I think that even for this particular island, Puerto Rico, we even have the idea of microgrids and distributing energy production and distribution and becoming more independent, because it was planned at 100 years ago, and we were early in our electricity, which was great for our GDP, which is why Puerto Rico is what it is. But now it's a victim of having an old grid that
Yeah.
ultimately is very centralized. And anytime there's an issue 20 miles away, we don't have electricity down here, for example.
Crazy, crazy. So I mean, it's a great parallel or analogy for a lot of things. Like, if we're too busy worrying about who the president is, like this past election, the fact that Donald Trump got elected, it shouldn't be life or death for Republicans. The fact that Kamala Harris didn't get elected, people shouldn't have to be going onto social media threatening to kill themselves or kill other people, because our greatest the government that's supposed to be the greatest impact should be our local government, if not the individual. That's what we're trying to do with Bitcoin. That's what you guys are trying to do with these standing up these power generators, or power creators in multiple places. So yeah, the Malawi River, the river in Malawi, obviously a stranded energy source, can be used in a natural and native way versus trying to force coal or force solar or force some other or nuclear and wait years for that to stand up. I get it. I want to ask you about Tony Cross said something also that was very interesting, and it was during the time when a company, I forget the name, but they were talking about basically burning up trash to harvest the methane, where they can use it to mine Bitcoin, from essentially burning it up, catching the methane that would generally just be released slowly or in an uncontrolled way. And it works. Now, if it works so
Vacuuming it.
well, say that again?
Vacuuming it. They're not burning
Yes.
it.
They're not, I'm sorry, they're vacuuming it. Okay. I
Mhm.
appreciate the
There's
correction.
another process that does actually burn there is another process, but that's not that process. This is
Yes,
just
ma'am.
sucking the methane from this particular landfill.
Okay, okay. And see, I'm learning right here. Obviously, I was like, another reason not watching Dirty Coin Energy. No, I went to computer science to stay away from natural sciences. Okay. So when Tony Cross talked about the incentives behind that, I'm thinking, okay, this is obviously like trash everywhere. And this is probably a special case of why this landfill worked and another doesn't. But why is this effort to harvest methane energy seemingly so slowly adopted? Like, it seems like people, whether they're for Bitcoin or for fiat, converting Bitcoin to fiat, it seems like they're leaving money on the table. So what's slowing that movement down to where I only hear about it because of your because of your documentary or because of a random tweet? I remember hearing about it maybe a couple years ago, and now it's nice to see it's happening. But why don't I hear it in the news? Why don't I hear like, oh, everyone's doing this? What gives?
Well, you're right. It's not talked about. The fact that I have a landfill chapter in my documentary, I would have never even imagined that was even going to be. You would have told me you're going to have a chapter about a landfill. I would have probably thought I was talking about the mafia or something like that. I would have imagined a completely different movie. But I mean, so there are landfills that are being used currently, but landfills need to meet a certain amount of you have your energy return on energy invested. You have to invest a ton of energy in order to get energy out of something, right? Or electricity, something that you can use, but you're already using a bunch of stuff that you can use to make the thing that you want. So sometimes the finances just don't make sense from a capital expenditure perspective. Now, for Bitcoin mining, to be able to mine Bitcoin cheaply, there's now like an economics of, yeah, you can mine right there. You don't need to create all these crazy transmission lines. You can just plug yourself right onto the landfill itself. And very few industries have the same kind of financial returns. And I think that that's why they just don't do it. They don't really need to. They can just go and plug into a place that already has available electricity. Places like, for example, Texas, you don't really kind of have to do that from a commercial perspective. But as a Bitcoin miner, you can at least try it. And some guys have tried it, and apparently it works. It works
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, Bitcoin seems to be, or Bitcoin mining seems to be, you don't just mine Bitcoin for the sake of mining Bitcoin. It's where a need presents itself. I remember Steve Barber even said in a tweet or a video, it's like everyone doesn't need to Bitcoin mine. It's you get your value where you can essentially kill two birds with one stone. Like, can you help the environment and also monetize that work that you're doing? Or can you heat your house and also monetize the heat that you're generating, like the example in Finland with I forgot that Nord Data, maybe Nord Data and
Nord block.
Marathon, Nord Block and Marathon, I think partnered up with them. Yeah, so I can get that. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and then when you think about the cost, the kilowatt per hour, it's not just if you just want to turn on a miner. Like, I live in Los Angeles, I would never turn on a miner in Los Angeles. You have to go to Texas, you'd have to go to North Carolina, and even still with the hash rate right now, it's unfeasible for a single miner to do that type of effort. So yeah, no, I
I
get it.
mean, I'm still a fan of home mining, and I live in Puerto Rico, and our
Mm,
electricity is very expensive, and
okay.
I mine. And there's a lot of smaller machines that are out there, even a bit axe.
The bid
Running a
axe,
bit
yeah.
axe will take up nothing, and you could hit a block, and 2 have already hit a block that I know of, so maybe more. So I don't know. And you're also like a solo miner out there. So if you win a block, you win the whole block. So
I
I
guess
don't know. It's a lottery.
but I guess I have to correct myself. I have like an individual. I'm not going to say how many miners I have, but I do have miners. But I'm not a solo miner because I was pooled up with brains. So it's not a
I like
solo miner,
green.
but yeah, they're good. I like them. But
Yeah, the
I
UI is
my
great.
my
Not
my
paid by brain.
advisor. Yeah, yeah. My advisor told me to like, oh, shut it down right now because like, the hash rate is too high and it's not gonna be good for your electricity bill. So I kind of just listened to him. But I'm kind of looking to turn it back on sometime soon. We'll see. I want to talk about this quote, and I don't know who said it. I don't recognize him. He was wearing a cowboy hat in your documentary.
I had
But he's
two cowboy hats.
Okay.
But
So
continue.
one
But
one
continue.
of the guys, and coincide this with Magdalena, who also said, well, I'll say her quote first. It's only fair that we bring the rest of the world to our own standard of living. And then he said right before her, when you look at the history of the world, countries and communities that had affordable and reliable power have clearly a better standard of living, have more individual liberties, more prosperity, more opportunities. We've seen those charts out there with, the more energy that we produce, United Kingdom, United States, we're richer, we're better off, we're more
Higher
progressed.
GDP.
That's higher GDP. Um, and so when I think about solar and wind, have been labeled by even many of the folks in your documentary as unreliables. I think it's a derogatory term, I guess, or maybe, an applicable term for those.
Intermittent.
Intermittent, okay. They say some people say unreliables.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. People are like, "You interviewed everybody. Everybody in your movie is like I've heard criticisms that
Yeah.
everybody agrees, and I'm like, you have no idea. These people do not agree with each
They
other.
don't agree. That's I was looking
I
at them.
have
There's no way that guy agrees with that guy. It's so funny.
No,
They
I have
felt like
very
it.
many
Yeah.
different viewpoints on the movie. I have very different, so I understand that people kind of want to see it black and white, like pro or
Yeah.
against Bitcoin, but even within the Bitcoin community, there's
Mm-mm.
so much division on a lot of subjects that are core to energy, and Bitcoin mining is energy.
Yeah. So based on that, like when we think about the standard of living, and when we think about like Malawi or another emerging region,
And by the way, that was
we
Gideon Powell. Did I say his name? I think I did.
no,
Yeah,
you
Gideon
didn't.
Powell.
So that
Okay,
was the one with the cowboy hat?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
his quote.
Right
Mhm.
on, right on. And so when you think about, we had the United States, the West, 150 years ago, Industrial Revolution, and we did that through using reliables or using fossil fuels to drive our progress. And now you see, these third world regions, and maybe we already answered that question, but you have Malawi, you have, South America, you have, Central America. And it's like, I always hear about their energy being, oh, look at this wind we're making, look at these wind farms we're making, look at these solar panels we're making. And coal is not alien to the region, oil is not alien to the region, but there's so much inference, there's so much purpose to drive wind and solar and those batteries that, again, a lot of people in your own documentary would absolutely hate it. Um, why does it seem like
That
the
would be a
Central
different
Americans?
documentary.
Oh yeah, why does it seem like those emerging nations have to take the risk, but we in the West, it's like, we already have our coal and our oil. It just feels
I don't think that that's so much
imbalanced.
the case. I think
Okay.
that they are still building coal. They are still
Okay.
building what they need to build. People will survive. They don't give a crap about G8 or any of that. I think at the end of the day, people are
G8, what
gonna
did you say? G8? Oh,
like
you
the
mean the G8.
G8.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like they just wanna survive, and if they can figure it out and they can get the money and get a loan, frankly, from the IMF and put together
Yeah.
a coal plant, a lot of them are doing it. I think that what happens is that the finances behind solar and wind and batteries, um, they how do I say this? There's so much money to be made, and they rely on public relations, investor relations. There's a lot of
Government
different
funding.
things. Of course, the government funding. I mean, it's a messy playing field, and I've honestly debated how dirty I want to get, because I think that it's very messy. Energy, the subject of energy. Look at Tesla. Look at so many
Yeah.
people that you don't even know their names because
Yeah.
they were Tesla. They were suicided. I mean, energy
Wow.
has been a like eh, yeah, it's been a really interesting taboo subject. But at the end of the day, I know that, but I can't get derailed by that, because ultimately we just want to have reliable and cheap electricity for everyone. I
Yeah.
think that is, at this point, we can't have Teslas and iPhones and think we're from the future and still have unreliable power that's super expensive. We do need to bring the cost down. There is good technology. There are a lot of shackles that shackle all of us, and we need to just kind of be proactive and productive about it. I don't think that pointing fingers at this like war that has been played for hundreds and hundreds of years, it just has to stop. And
Mhm.
we need to look at it again and say this is not a zero sum game. People are consuming shit tons of amounts of electricity, and it's only going up. And really, there's room for everyone. So there's no need to have like it's the energy mix. You don't have to be pro a wave energy and against something else. It can all participate as we are going to need that electricity. We're going to want it, and it should be cheap. There should be so much of it that it's inexpensive. It should be good. The finances should work. And so that's why I don't particularly get too caught up on some of the because as soon as I pull the thread and I start finding skeletons, I don't know. I kind of back off a little bit. Like, okay. But I'm still
Interesting.
there. I'm still there. I still saw certain things, but ultimately I just want to be productive with my time.
So is that a segue into why you called the documentary Dirty Coin? You want to explain that one after that?
Well, look, when I first heard of Bitcoin, I thought it was awesome. Magic internet money, whatever, it'll go up, number go up.
Yep.
And then it's people started using it, and I was in San Jose at the time, and people were using it for Silk Road. So if you had Bitcoin, you were going to parties and you were buying drugs, pretty much. And so it was kind of taboo. And not all of us were. Like I didn't. I wasn't in the party scene. I was already married with children, so I was already in a more going to putting kids to bed.
A little more
And
stable.
yeah, not using it on Silk Road, but I thought it was, like, really fascinating, like, super fascinating, like, "Wow, you're using Bitcoin for that?" It made me more bullish on Bitcoin. I'm like, "Wow, okay, interesting." And then I found out about, like, the, Cubans using it to just send back and forth, and this was in 2018, and I was like, "Whoa." So I but that even that's
So
illegal.
so the Cubans were using it for remittances, right?
Yeah,
I can't even say
sending
that
money
word
back
right.
home.
Huh. I've
Yeah.
never I'm always wondering, like, I wonder if they would do that, but and you're saying that that's illegal because of the communist regime, and there's like,
Well,
you can only
there's
use.
and the embargo, and there's
Mhm,
certain, like, international monetary laws that you're
mhm.
obviously bypassing by just sending Bitcoin, but people did that, and it was I mean, and I say it was illegal, by the way. I don't think it was illegal. I'm just saying that it's because it was so new at the time. It was just people sending Bitcoin, you know? It wasn't like a of course, it wasn't illegal, but if you think about it, this is a country that has been heavily controlled, what comes in and out of it. And for Bitcoin to just be able and for there to be local liquidity for it, yeah, it just but all of these things were kind of dirty. They were kind of a fuck you. They were cash. They were cash. Cash is dirty. Cash is gross. But it works. Your gross cash works, especially if it's American and in many, many places in the world. And that's something that I don't take for granted is the more I travel, I'm like, wow, even it's like a USDT, right? It's even the stable currency that they use in other countries is still pegged to the US dollar. There's a lot of privilege there, and we'll see how long we get to enjoy that privilege. But for now, that's privilege. Anyway,
Hmm.
so Bitcoin is for me digital cash, and you can't censor it. You can't. Yeah, there's it doesn't matter if you're a terrorist. I can send you right now some, and it goes. It might alert a bunch of people, right? Who's this chick? Was that wallet? Like, I would not recommend it, but nobody can stop it.
Right.
So, but that being said, I mean, there have been cases. So that's a different conversation. I don't know enough to speak of.
You know, I like this. I like where this conversation goes because there's such a with the number going up right now, at the time of this recording, I'm not going to do that. But we're in the high 90s, and we're feeling poor because we hit 108 a week ago, or a couple of weeks, 10 days ago. But Bitcoin is a store of value. But you had just spent 3 minutes talking about how it is cash, it's a dirty coin, it's a medium of exchange.
Mhm.
And whether slowly through layer one or quickly through layer two, there's no doubts about that. But it seems the narrative right now with the number go up is capital asset and store it in your custodian. Michael Saylor, I'm not trying to alienate him, of course, but again, I'm okay with calling a spade a spade. He does not like talking about Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, but here you are showing how, or talking about how it can manifest in that way. And we know it does in the emerging world. We know it does in El Salvador. We know it does with the crypto anarchists, with the cypherpunks. Why do you think that there is such a distancing from, or pushing away or ignoring the medium of exchange narrative, primarily from, I guess, Americans and big institutions? Why do they not like that medium of exchange narrative?
They still like their cash to exchange. They want to exchange their dirty cash.
They want their
Bitcoin is
dollars.
they want to use their dollars. They want their dollars so that they can spend their dollars. They don't want to spend their Bitcoin. I've spoken with so many people about this that it just kind of blows my mind, because I've been using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange for a very long time, and it's frankly, as a business owner, it's great, especially if you work internationally.
Mhm.
It's it's the best way that you can send money from one country to the other, cheapest, best way. That as a maybe it's because of the type of business that I run, that I work with so many different professionals from all over the world. And usually when people find out that especially for Dirty Coin, we were raising in Bitcoin. So for me, it was like, well, if people are willing to work for Bitcoin, then that was the same as if you would have given me the money in dollars. And ultimately now we're moving the Bitcoin. So I don't know. Some people could, and they do. They think that's reckless, but that's for me why Bitcoin is exists. So for me, and you can't stop me. And we can both share different opinions. Like, it doesn't
That's
even
right.
matter. So I don't care what other people think. I do think that Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, there's no other medium of exchange like Bitcoin. To be able to have money that grows that way, and to be able to store it, to be able to move it, there's really nothing like it. And if you are, when you have, like, I've incorporated Bitcoin into my business for the last 4 years. So, I can tell you from a business, from an executive perspective, why it has been a good idea for us financially. I mean, think about it. We were
Would you
right
say
through
that
the bear.
I'm sorry. Would you say that it actually opens doors and makes it easier to do commerce? Or is it like
Yes.
pulling teeth, like, hey, I want to do Bitcoin? People are like rolling their eyes, like, what? They're not rolling their eyes. They're saying, yeah, this is easy for me. Like, here you go. Bing, bang, boom, we're done. Like, is that what you're saying?
Yes, there are certain countries that if you're going to pay somebody for a certain job, it needs to basically go through the government and make sure that we pay for all the permits and that we did everything, which
Mhm.
I'm not dissing on that, but a lot of these countries, there is a lot of corruption. So it's like a pay me. We call it la payola. It's just a
La
checkpoint to pay
payola.
me. La payola. Yeah.
Oh, la payola. I'm
But
sorry.
it comes from pay. Payola. La
Yeah.
payola.
It's like the kind of like the police down in Mexico a little bit, huh?
Yeah, so you do get shake down or shaken
Yeah.
down,
But
and
by the government officially, not like, this cop right here versus that cop, like
unofficially,
officially.
yeah, unofficially they do it first. It's like,
Mm.
I can take you to the big bosses. I don't know. It's different everywhere. It's different everywhere. I've heard
Mhm.
crazy things from different places, so it's different everywhere. But what was it? Why was I saying that though? Because of the
I'm sorry to interrupt.
biota.
Yeah,
Oh,
because yeah,
Bitcoin.
like
Okay, more effective.
getting basically getting around the kind of like the yellow tape.
That yeah, the red tape, yellow.
Yellow tape.
I'm not
Well,
sure
red
what
tape it means like you shall not pass. Yellow tape means like you can get past, but it's going to take a
sure.
while. So
Okay, so both yellow and red and
yeah,
black and all
crazy.
of the
Oh my.
fucking tape. Yeah, you gotta go through a lot of it. But Bitcoin lets you jump that. For example, when one of my best animators, she was Russian and she
Mhm.
is Russian and she's incredible. And I worked with her with a bunch of stuff. We won awards together. She is an amazing animator. And in 2021, I used to pay her via PayPal. 2021, I couldn't pay her via PayPal anymore. I could not
Russia-Ukraine
transact.
war. Yeah,
So,
off the Swift.
yes, just like that, just no for because I wasn't really following the war or anything,
Right.
but just suddenly I'm like,
Dang.
just like that, I can't pay her. There was no and I'm like, "What?" And then that's when I looked at the news and being able to switch over to Bitcoin was or stable was
Right.
really the only way that we could continue working together, and we were able to finish the project that we were doing. And frankly, I got a little scared and I was like, well, I don't really want to keep like spending my Bitcoin's going down right
Mhm.
now
Right.
really fast. So but when you're spending Bitcoin, I also feel like you're just so much more careful about how you spend it.
Yeah.
Because it's
Every
Bitcoin.
time. That's right.
So I don't, like when I go to conferences, I like to buy with Bitcoin, but I'm not going to spend the same amount that I would have spent with my cash.
Is it
I really don't
That's
spend as much.
funny. That's funny. I mean, Bitcoin kind of makes you natively or naturally austere. Like it's like, is it worth it? Like, do I need that rinky dinky like this doodad? Like this is a Bluetooth speaker, but it's like I already have one. But if you go somewhere and it's like you're drunk and it's like, oh, like I'll buy another one. But no, you can't drink enough to say, oh, do I need a fifth Bluetooth speaker if I'm paying in Bitcoin? You're like, you know what? That layer two Bitcoin, I'm going to hold on to that one. It's like they don't want you to be critical about what you spend your money on. They, central bankers, the Keynesians, they want you to spend, spend, spend. Velocity of money is good, but for
Yeah.
us Bitcoiners, it's like, well, savings is the foundation of prosperity, and you're you're a living example of that when you're thinking about when should I spend this money? Why should I spend? Of course, we can spend and replace, but why spend in the first place if you don't really need it?
Right. You
Mm.
really do
Oh,
rethink what's important, which is
yeah,
good.
that is good. I want to so this other question is kind of interesting. And I guess it's a good segue into what's important. People are in Bitcoin for multiple reasons. Some people are in there. Michael Saylor, he wants to create this fiat, monstrosity vehicle thing with loans and whatever. Some people are in Bitcoin mining for balancing the grid. Some people are in it for freedom or number go up, whatever, trading. I've heard from some miners or people involved in mining, that they actually don't really care about the freedom technology, the right to spend, the right to have the right to work out your own incentives in the economy, but that they only care about balancing an old grid or balancing a mature grid, or creating a new grid for emerging regions. Do you do you feel like that's a legitimate story? I mean, and like, let's just say, for instance, Bitcoin never went over $110,000. Let's just say, like, at that point, it goes back down, and like we go through halvings of 65 to 100K forever. While, by the way, inflation continues on. Do you think that Bitcoin can continue if it never goes up in value? And would mining essentially go away with Bitcoin being capped at such a low relative value at 110 or 100K. What are your thoughts on that? Like, some weird future like timeline.
On average, some miners are mining for they're mining under 20K.
Okay.
Some more, some less. So under 20K. So
They're gonna
as
make their
long
money.
as Bitcoin is over 20K, those miners can stay on, and that's fine. And if they work out an energy contract where, they can just sell the electricity back to the grid, and that's another way, like Riot does,
Yep.
and, others, then you have another way. If you're like Nordblock and you can sell the heat, then you're making the Bitcoin and you're also selling the heat. So I think it depends on how you build your company. It's an interesting subject because people think of miners and they think of like a group of miners, the Bitcoin miners, but
Right.
really every single one of them is an entrepreneur. Some of them work together, of course, but there's like most of those people, they're just wildcatters, they're just they found a spot, they bought their upstream or their what's the other one, Giga, they bought their thing, they went, they
What
just
is Giga? Is Giga just like a same thing as upstream? Like they just like they take the methane from the ground?
no. I think they may have that technology, but Giga has the containers that you can easily plop down and just plug them in and go.
Gotcha. Yeah.
They're out of Texas. And
Mm.
actually, I interviewed the CEO. The CEO made it to Stranded, the short film, but he didn't make it to Dirty Coin, but he gave
Mm.
a good interview.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, as an industry, it's like, I would say it's more akin to data center industry, like the data center industry, it's too big to even think the data center, like you would know it's regionalized. So when it comes to Bitcoin mining, I think that I know for sure there are a lot of different interests. This is not the same crowd that you see at like a developer's Bitcoin convention. This is a very different crowd that's in it
Yeah.
for sometimes overlapping reasons, and a lot of times no. And also, I would say that it's in the Bitcoin mining space, there are a lot of scammers and a lot of intelligence. Think about it.
Mm.
Bitcoin is Bitcoin, the asset that it is, and Bitcoin mining is a huge backbone uh, of Bitcoin, and you are a country where are you going to send your intelligence agents? I mean, I feel like you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to assume that intelligence is there paying attention to who is there. And there have been several that have been ousted as intelligence. And that's it. That's just who they are. And that's fine. But I have met a lot of people that they will tell you that they're not interested in the freedom thing, and they're just really, they barely make any money. They
Mhm.
don't really keep their keys well. Their computer has been hacked a bunch of times. Like, I'm not a target for you. Walk along. And so there is some wisdom to being invisible. And
Interesting.
so take that as you want to take it.
No, no, that does make sense. I have some other quotes that I want to talk to you about. I'll be honest, like when I was watching this, I thought I would be like, and I already said I thought I'd be bored. And I'm like, this was the fastest hour that I've ever experienced, besides like, I don't know, playing a video game back in my video game playing days. I don't know, but like this was good homework. All I can say. If I've already said it about 30 minutes ago. You guys have to watch this video. It's an amazing story. She captured it very well. And it's shareable. That's the thing. Like it rehearses a lot of the narratives that us Bitcoiners have heard multiple times. But for someone who's outside of the space, it's a great way to be introduced to Bitcoin because it's relevant to things that they may care about, which is energy and power and emerging nations. So for this one, I'm quoting Steve Barber. He said, if you're low carbon, you're good. If you have high carbon, you're bad. If you're coal, you're bad. If you're solar, you're good. They normalize everything in this one standard of carbon emissions. And then right with them, right at, or shortly thereafter, Mark Moss said, quoting Christina Lagarde, said, innovation is a threat to our financial stability. Now, maybe I'm barking up another conspiracy tree here, but could you make the correlation that individuals progress where they are energy starved, that essentially they're prevented from thriving, thus limiting the competition to the legacy elite? So it's like if you starve the people that are upcoming, or if you distract them, they can't catch up to you, thus you limit your competition, and now you're kind of, it's like, oh, I only have to deal with these 2 people instead of dealing with all those 10 ragamuffins over there. Could the legacy elite be using things like the green narrative, or again, even Bitcoin is bad for the environment, to prevent regular people or the emerging world from going through their own progress or their own industrial revolution? Again, maybe I have my cone hat on, maybe my aluminum hat on, tinfoil hat, but I just see like these people are trying to create value. These people are trying to grow an industry or a nation or a region. And there's a lot of really well-off people that are trying to distract. I'm lost. Maybe you had some similar pinings, some thoughts. What do you got? What do you got for me?
I got this for you. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
that it's a psyop that we have to defend the truth by saying we're wearing our tinfoil hat. That I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, for example. It's like, just say your truth. It's like you see something, you're curious about something, you
Yeah.
don't negate, because imagine if that's what you're telling yourself. Imagine the amount of people that self-censor because they
Yeah.
don't want to. Like, there's the people like us, like, I don't want to sound racist, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't mean to be racist, but it's
But
like,
here's my racist statement. Right.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it. It came to my head, and I'll regret it later, I swear. But I'm gonna say it anyway. So there are other people that they will self-censor because they were raised. I was raised pretty well too, so I'm not gonna say they were raised better than me, but that's what I was gonna say. They have better manners, but then that limits honest conversation, because
Right.
there are certain subjects that are taboo. There are certain subjects that we can't talk about, because if you talk about it, you're immediately, cast it with a particular, many tags. There are many, one being conspiracy theorist, one being, and the problem with conspiracy theories is that there's so many lies woven into the truth that you have to be so careful with it. And these lies are planted. There are books of agents of the CIA talking about how this is done and has been done. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is for the people that have been doing their homework. We're the ones kind of saying certain things, or other people are the ones saying certain things. So I feel like right now, the independent media is going to break that up. We're going to bring the truth. And Elon Musk keeps saying, "You're the media now,"
We're the media
and
now. Yeah.
yeah. So let's
I,
see how true that is.
do you think that that's true? I mean, let's talk about that one for a minute. I mean, do you see the work that you're doing when you think about the documentary? I mean, as Bitcoin goes up, number go up, people who when did Dirty Coin come out? Like 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
April 20,
April.
2024, the day of the
Yeah.
halving.
What? Did you plan that?
Completely. No,
Yes, you did.
absolutely. I couldn't
Yes.
have. I couldn't have. That was like a
Bitcoiners are the
blessing,
best
a Satoshi
marketers.
blessing.
Bitcoiners are the best marketers. I love it. Okay, so now we're looking at 8 months ago. And of course it was, that Dirty Coin documentary, when Bitcoin hits another halving, that's going to be a legacy, an OG film. It's going to be a classic. You are
A time
bringing the
capsule.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, so when I think about, people coming into Bitcoin in 25, people coming into Bitcoin in 27, they're gonna be looking at you and say, "Hey, this is the narrative of Bitcoin." Do you find people like you leading the way, in the future, whether it's you or it's like or Mike the Shooter or someone else? Or do you feel like, okay, now that Bitcoin is stable enough, 60 Minutes is going to come in and take over everything. What are your thoughts about how people like you and Mike will evolve over time? Are you truly the new media?
Look, I have these hoodies under these presents down there, so I won't take it out. But it says "Todos somos Satoshi." We're all Satoshi.
Yeah.
I think that we're all Satoshi. We all have our little grain of sand to add to this decentralized digital cash that works really well. Some
Yeah.
people hoard it, and some people lose it, and some people spend it. Just they don't care. Some people trade it. But everybody's paying attention. But it's because we are all paying attention. At this point, it's a force that's unstoppable. But there are still a lot of opportunity zones for Bitcoin where the reason why I chose to do this documentary, there were way easier documentaries or films that I could have developed first. Way easier. I went with this one because I felt like nobody was really going to be able to say that story right. It was always going to be a corporate documentary that ultimately was going to feel like a corporate documentary, and it was going to feel like a commercial, and there were going to be people that were going to just trash it. That was where all the money was going to come from, because you have other tokens that they have a people in the business world understand that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange
Mhm.
or store of value. Okay. So people are already understanding this at high levels. So it's already being used, but there are competing crypto that would prefer to have that place, and the government would prefer them have that place too, because they can control that coin in a way that they could not control Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Even though they've tried, and I'm sure they have an impact. I'm certain that governments have an impact, but ultimately Bitcoin just kind of readjusts and just does. At least that's what history has shown.
Yeah.
And and so, you have a lot of opposition, and you have a lot of money coming from the opposition. A lot of money, unlimited money, printed money, shitcoin money. I mean,
Right.
all kinds of money, right? And when I say shitcoin, I also mean in some ways
The
the US
dollar.
dollar. But yeah, exactly.
I knew what you're
Um,
gonna say. Yeah.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
there's
it's
also
there's
like
no cap.
crypto.
There's no cap to it. Like, I mean, what's better, the dollar or Ethereum? Like, I mean, they're very much the same. I don't know. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and these people are making both, and so those people have money. When an Ethereum documentary went up overnight, they raised $3 million, and she was raising money at the same time. I was raising money for Dirty Coin, and I raised like $600, and my
Oh
my
my
budget was like
gosh.
$1 million, and I'm like, oh, this is never gonna work. Like,
Oh
I
my
can't do
gosh.
this on $1,000 budget. So, after you see the movie, you see why. And because my intention was always to go and meet and visit and meet the people and see exactly what was going on and ask them the hard questions and the easy questions and the unexpected questions, and ultimately find a story there. Because even though it's hard, and I named it Dirty Coin from the beginning. So for me, it was important that people that sat down for an interview knew that I was going to do this entirely my way, like completely. And that's everybody that sat down with me, everybody that you saw knew that. And they sat down still. Those were the brave ones. The people that you see in that movie, they were the brave ones, because here's this woman saying, I'm going to interview you for Dirty Coin as a Bitcoin mining documentary, and I'm going to get to the bottom of whether Bitcoin mining is good or not. And a lot of people honestly said no, because why would they want to do? I feel like maybe I would say no these days. I don't know. Depends. I wouldn't say yes all the time. But I feel like everybody that sat down had personal affinity with me, particularly. They trusted me. I
Yeah.
appreciate that trust. And I hope that I did well by it. in terms of a dirty coin too, for me, it would have to be in the second, like, and like not the second halving, but like one halving or two halvings from now, because the industry will change. And kind of going back to your earlier question, yes, you might. It's the mining has had these cycles where different people come in and out. So if it becomes not profitable, like let's say we're to go under 20 and you
Yeah.
have your industrial miners just kind of like saying, this is way too hard, fuck it.
Right.
You're going to have a bunch of home miners. You're going to have a bunch of machines in the secondary market, and that's going to move and it's going to get redistributed to the new people, the new cycle.
That's right.
Yes. So I'm not worried about that at all. It's just going to be, so that's why I would even, in fact, I expect it based on what I have seen is that yes, the dynamics, the financial dynamics will change. And is it still good? Is it still a net positive? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see in 8 years what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, it's so funny. You and for my last question for you, and you've been a great guest. You said Dirty Coin 2 probably at least another cycle away, which makes sense. Things are going to change, formulas, people, incentives, technology, all will change. It will be fast. But what other documentaries could you be working on in the next year, in the next two? Where will we see Alana Mediavilla coming out with something Bitcoin related primarily, or not? Like what else are you working on?
Well, a Bitcoin related project that I would like to do, it would be a node runner short film. What is running your own node? Who are the node runners? Why? How do they do what they do? Why? What does it mean to run a node when you're in Bitcoin? And this would be distributed at meetups. This is like the market viability of this is niche.
Yeah,
This is not, everybody's not going to like, it's not mainstream. Dirty Coin is
not at all.
mainstream. This node running one would be extremely niche, but I think it would be fun. And I would still make it for film festivals as well. So it would still be a film. And then it would just bring kind of this idea. There's a lot of nerds and there's a lot of people in Bitcoin at these film festivals or in crypto at these film festivals. So to be able to have a Bitcoin presence is, I think, really cool because it brings certain curious minds into the room but they're outside of the bubble. So I love doing that. So for sure we would do to like short like film festivals, short film festivals with that one. But that's like a fun. I really don't. It was really hard to make Dirty Coin, so I kind of want to have an easier. It's funny. I say an easier project, but my next project is actually called El Grid, and it's a docu-series of what the grid in Puerto Rico, like what
Mhm.
Puerto Rico can teach the world about energy independence. And this goes back to my question of the human cost of not having reliable electricity and the importance of being ready and again from a productive perspective, because I could come and destroy for an hour and a half, or we can present solutions for an hour and a half, and we can wake people up and people can realize that nobody's coming to save them and that if they want a microgrid, they need to put together a freaking microgrid. They need to figure it out. Who are the energy people? Who's the mayor? Who are the local people? What's up? Let's do it. Don't stop waiting for somebody to come and, fix anything, because the reality is that we will continue to wait forever and ever and ever and just see things not happen. And so for me, El Grid is a way of every episode we would look at a different part of the grid in Puerto Rico. We're going to look at how we got to this place. But we're also going to look at how other countries innovated and like killed it under similar circumstances, and how they can now be energy independent countries, and how can they do that ultimately as an island. I'm not anti fossil fuels at all, but we always have to ship it. And that's a problem, because if there's an issue with the ports,
Yeah.
it's a central point of failure. So having that central point of failure puts the entire island at risk. Again, I'm not anti fossil fuels. And again, there's space in the energy mix for everyone, but we can't just rely on that one, again, central point of failure for the entire island. We need to be self-reliant. I'm the first to admit that solar is not green. Of course, it's not green, but it does produce electricity during the day, and it does mean that you have that electricity. You can have a life-saving device on. You can, be independent. So there's that. There is wind, and there are some people, when we think of windmills, we think of these big ones, but there is some really fancy new technology of like smaller windmills that look like palm trees that you can set up, and they can just, grab the electricity and power, for example, the street lights.
Mm.
It's very dangerous to drive at night without the street lights on. I mean, some cars have very dim lights, and it's actually very dangerous. So to be able to have a couple of those. So for me, I am pro looking at all of the solutions and looking at them locally, looking at them externally, because at the end of the day, you have all of these like intellectuals talking about energy, but we just need the lights on, and it needs to be cheap. So your actions, and for me, I feel very called to this energy. It's like a calling. It
Yep.
called me to Dirty Coin, and it calls me to this. I think that it is my I need to put together people in the room without the agenda of putting them to fight with each other. I don't want that. I don't want the drama. I'm not doing a docu-series where the drama of the grid. I don't want that. I want a productive show where people can be like, holy fuck, the future's going to be rad. That's what I want people to know. Like that's the vibe that I want people to get. Because could we do a drama show? Yeah, already I can tell you that we could do a drama show, and there might be some drama that maybe leaks in, but that's not the point of the story at all. Because otherwise, it's just another clickbaity BS waste of your time, and I don't want to waste anybody's time.
Yeah, that was a great way to describe what you did with Dirty Coin. Again, like I said, it's all these players, all these actors, and I looked at them like, people aren't sniping each other from across the room. Now, of course, they may have been in other states and other countries, but
They were.
it's like, though, yeah, they were, and maybe for the better. But the way it was portrayed, the way it was demonstrated, it's like there can be a solution where all parties and all people are bringing their expertise to bear to essentially get the lights on, and that's the goal. People need their lights, and I think that with Bitcoin mining, it's going to help turn on more lights on than without. Alana, thank you for being on this show.
Thank
It
you for
was
having
great.
me.
Man, it was great to have you. I would love to, something about this show is that I do want to try to branch it away from Bitcoin only, and I will be doing that over the next season. So when that El Grid comes out, even though it may not mention Bitcoin at all, I'll be looking to bring you back on to talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the Bitcoin community will be very excited about it, because ultimately it is about independence, and ultimately we all Bitcoiners, funny fact, they all use electricity.
You don't freaking say.
Mom joke, terrible mom joke. But
All right.
there is a lot of desire to understand energy, and it applies to all of us, and although the documentary is going to have a focus in Puerto Rico, it's really just so that we can have a case study to look at. But everything that we're looking at here are solutions that could be used in other locations as well. And the locations that are being used in other places, like we mentioned off camera, giving the microphone to people that don't normally have the microphone, and shows like yours, and being able to bring people to talk about their projects. You have me talking about my movie. I really appreciate that and your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
And so, this is important, because we are able to add information that isn't normally there, like we mentioned before. And I kind of lost my train of thought, so I'm just gonna
No. It's okay.
I feel like that's a good place to leave it, so I'll leave it there. But anyway, thank you for your time. And I do think that, basically what I was going to say is I do think that ultimately we need to take more responsibility and understand more things. We need to understand how the electricity works. We need to understand how our water works. We need to understand how our shit system works. These are things that if shit hits the fan, we will need to understand how to handle these things locally. And I think that we have shut down parts of our capacity that are connected to survival. And it can be a lot of fun to take control over those things and not be in effect of a centralized system expecting for them to plan the best for us. If we're alive and we have strength and intelligence, we need to use that for putting that to use in the community, not just ourselves, I think.
Well said. Well, no, not. I think that's brilliant. Well said. Well said. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on my show. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
So Alana came on my show from Dirty Coin, Alana Mediavilla. Again, the documentary, when you take it from me, I'm a gamer. I lift weights. I don't want to watch National Geographics. I wanted to watch this show. I wanted to watch it from the minute it came on. You're gonna recognize a lot of people you know in the Bitcoin space. You're gonna learn something. You're gonna hear things that you already know. But these are the type of people that, not saying that you need to support, but they are delivering value added stories that won't always be propagated by the traditional sources. So check it out. Dirty Coin by Alana Mediavilla. I'm Sir Ulric, like my father before me. Tune in next time when I have another brilliant advocate for liberty.